In the dusty streets of 1881 Arizona Territory, a desperate 8-year-old girl approaches a broken widower with an impossible plea: save her dying brother when no one else will help. When the grieving doctor finally utters the words, "You're mine now," to these 2 orphaned children, will his promise be enough to forge a new family from the ashes of their shared loss? A rattlesnake slithered across the dusty main street of Tombstone as the church bell rang 6 times, echoing through the empty Arizona Territory morning in 1881. Jack Morrison sat hunched over his whiskey glass in the Silver Dollar Saloon, watching dust devils dance outside the grimy windows. His black coat hung loose on his thin frame, and his once steady doctor's hands shook as he lifted the drink to his lips. The barkeeper, old Pete, wiped down glasses with a dirty rag. "You gonna sit there all day again, Doc? Town's got sick folks who need tending." Jack's laugh came out bitter and sharp. "Ain't no doctor anymore, Pete. Doctors save people. I just watch 'em die." 3 months had crawled by since Mary's funeral. 3 months since he'd failed to cure the only person who ever mattered. The medical bag that once held hope now gathered dust in his empty house on the hill. Every morning brought the same crushing weight. Another day to survive without purpose. The saloon doors creaked open, letting in a shaft of golden sunlight and the sound of wagon wheels on packed dirt. Jack didn't bother looking up. Nothing in this god-forsaken place could surprise him anymore. Then small bare feet appeared next to his table. The girl couldn't have been older than 8, with brown braids tied with scraps of blue ribbon and a faded dress that had been mended too many times to count. She stood perfectly still, studying him with eyes that seemed far too old for her young face. "Mr. Doctor," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the wind outside, "please don't turn me away." Jack finally raised his head, meeting her steady gaze. Something about her reminded him of Mary, the same stubborn tilt of the chin, the same refusal to back down when things got hard. "I ain't a doctor anymore, child. Find someone else." The girl stepped closer, her small hands clenched into fists at her sides. "There ain't nobody else in all of Tombstone. My little brother's coughing up blood, and I can't make it stop no matter what I try." Jack's chest tightened. Blood. Just like Mary in those final, terrible days when nothing he did made any difference. "Kid, I can't help you. I couldn't even help my own. Please." The word cut through his protest like a knife. "Danny's only 4 years old. He's all the family I got left in this whole world." The pain in her voice hit Jack like a physical blow. He'd heard those same desperate words echo in his own mind every night since the funeral. "What's your name?" he found himself asking. "Lucy Brennan, sir. And I ain't leaving this saloon until you say you'll come see Danny." Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance, promising rain that might never come. Jack stared at this fierce little girl who'd walked into his private hell and demanded he crawl back out. For the first time in months, something stirred in the hollow space where his heart used to be. Lucy pulled a small cloth bundle from her dress pocket and placed it on the scratched wooden table between them. When she unwrapped it, 6 silver coins gleamed in the dim saloon light, alongside a tarnished, heart-shaped locket. "This here's everything Danny and me got to our names," she said, pushing the bundle toward Jack with trembling fingers. "Our mama died when Danny was born, and our papa, well, he went to find work in the copper mines last winter and never came back." Jack stared at the pitiful collection of treasures. The coins wouldn't buy enough medicine to treat a head cold, let alone serious lung trouble. But the way Lucy offered everything she owned with such dignity reminded him of why he'd become a doctor in the first place. "Keep your money," he said quietly, standing up from the table. His legs felt unsteady after sitting for so long. "Where's the boy?" Hope flickered across Lucy's face like sunrise after the longest night. The old boarding house on 4th Street, room 7, up the creaky stairs. They walked through Tombstone's dusty streets in silence, past the general store where miners bought supplies and the barber shop where men gathered to share gossip. Lucy's short legs moved quickly to keep up with Jack's longer stride, and she kept glancing up at him like she was afraid he might change his mind and disappear. The boarding house smelled of lye soap and boiled cabbage. Jack followed Lucy up the narrow wooden stairs, each step creaking under their weight. Room 7 was barely big enough for a single bed, a washstand, and one cracked window that looked out on the alley behind the building. The boy lay on a thin mattress, his small chest rising and falling in quick, shallow breaths. Even from across the room, Jack could hear the wet rattle in Danny's lungs that meant serious trouble. The child's face was flushed with fever, and dark circles shadowed his closed eyes. "Danny?" Lucy knelt beside the bed, gently touching her brother's forehead. "I brought someone to help you feel better." Jack moved closer, his medical training taking over despite his doubts. The boy was burning up with fever, and when he coughed, flecks of bright red blood stained his lips. Consumption, maybe complicated by pneumonia. In a proper hospital back east, there might be hope. Out here, with no real equipment or medicines. "How long has he been like this?" Jack asked, checking Danny's pulse with gentle fingers. "Near on 2 weeks now. Started with just a little cough, but then he couldn't keep food down, and yesterday morning, he started bringing up blood." Lucy's voice stayed steady, but Jack saw her hands shaking. "I tried everything I could think of. Willow bark tea, cool cloths, even prayers. Nothing's working." Jack examined the boy more carefully, feeling the rapid heartbeat and listening to the congested breathing. Danny was very sick, possibly dying. Any honest doctor would prepare the family for the worst. But looking at Lucy's brave, frightened face, Jack remembered Mary's last words. Find something worth fighting for. Maybe saving this boy wouldn't bring his wife back. Maybe he'd fail again, like he had with Mary. But this little girl had walked into that saloon and asked him to remember who he used to be. "I'll need supplies," he said finally. "And it's going to be a long fight." Lucy's smile could have lit up the entire Arizona territory. Danny's small fingers clutched at the blanket while his whole body shook with another terrible coughing fit. Jack had seen this before, the way sickness could steal a child's strength in just hours. The boy's face looked pale as morning fog, and each breath sounded like wind through broken glass. "How long has he been this bad?" Jack asked, rolling up his sleeves. His medical bag sat open on the rickety wooden table, tools gleaming in the lamplight like old friends welcoming him home. Lucy wrung out a cloth in the wash basin, her movements quick and sure. "Started getting worse yesterday evening. This morning he couldn't even sit up to drink water." She pressed the cool cloth to Danny's burning forehead. "I've been singing to him all night, but I think he's getting scared." Jack knelt beside the narrow bed, listening to Danny's chest with his stethoscope. The sounds inside told a dangerous story, fluid building up where only air should be. Without proper medicine, the boy might not see another sunrise. "Danny," Jack said softly, waiting for the child's fever-bright eyes to focus on him. "I'm going to help you feel better, but I need you to be brave. Can you do that for Lucy and me?" The boy nodded weakly, then whispered something Jack couldn't hear. "What did he say?" Jack leaned closer. Lucy's voice broke just a little. "He wants to know if you're going to leave like everyone else does." The words hit Jack harder than any punch. This sick little boy, fighting for each breath, was worried about being abandoned again. Jack thought about all the patients he'd walked away from after Mary died, all the people who'd needed him while he wallowed in his own pain. "Listen to me, Danny," Jack said, taking the boy's hot little hand in both of his. "I'm not going anywhere. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not until you're well enough to chase rabbits through the desert." A tiny smile flickered across Danny's face before another coughing spell took hold. Jack worked through the evening, mixing medicines and setting up a steam tent over the bed to help Danny breathe easier. Lucy stayed right beside him, learning each step, asking smart questions that surprised him. This girl understood more about doctoring than some grown men he'd known. "Mr. Morrison," Lucy said, during a quiet moment when Danny had finally drifted into restless sleep, "can I tell you something that might sound strange?" Jack looked up from grinding willow bark into powder. "What's that?" "When I first saw you in that saloon, you reminded me of my pa before he got sick. Same sad eyes, Same way of sitting, like the whole world was pressing down on your shoulders. Lucy folded her hands in her lap, suddenly looking much older than her 8 years. But tonight, watching you work, you look different. Like maybe you remember who you used to be. Jack felt something warm spread through his chest. Not the burning of grief, but something gentler. Hope, maybe. Or purpose. Your pa. What happened to him? Lung fever, same as what Danny's got now. But we didn't have nobody to help us then. Lucy's voice stayed steady, but Jack caught the tremor underneath. That's why I can't let Danny go through that alone. That's why I needed to find you. Outside, thunder rumbled across the Arizona Territory sky, promising the kind of spring storm that could wash the desert clean or flood everything in its path. Jack checked Danny's breathing again, adjusted the steam tent, and settled in for what he knew would be a long night of watching and waiting. But for the first time since Mary's funeral, he wasn't facing the darkness alone. Rain hammered against the boarding house windows like angry fists, while Danny fought the worst battle of his young life. His fever had climbed so high that Jack could feel the heat radiating from the boy's skin without even touching him. Every few minutes, violent coughing fits shook Danny's small frame, bringing up blood that stained the white pillowcase like scattered rose petals. "It's getting worse, isn't it?" Lucy asked, though they both knew the answer. She hadn't left her spot beside Danny's bed in over 12 hours, singing soft lullabies and stroking his damp hair. Jack nodded grimly while preparing another dose of medicine. In the big hospitals back east, they had machines and specialists and clean rooms with proper ventilation. Here in the Arizona Territory of 1881, he was fighting death with little more than herbs, hope, and determination. "Lucy, I need you to listen carefully," Jack said, pulling up a chair beside her. "Danny's sickness has gotten into his lungs real bad. His body is working so hard to breathe that it's wearing him out. But he's going to get better, right?" Lucy's voice carried the kind of desperate faith that could move mountains or break hearts. Before Jack could answer, Danny's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, the fever seemed to lift, and he looked directly at Lucy with perfect clarity. "Lucy," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the storm outside. "I had a dream about Mama," she said. "She said it was okay if I needed to go with her." "No." Lucy grabbed Danny's hand, holding tight enough to anchor him to the world. "You're not going anywhere, Danny Brennan. You promised me we'd see the ocean someday, remember? You promised we'd build that treehouse behind the big oak." Jack felt his throat tighten as he watched these two children face the possibility of separation with more courage than most adults could manage. Lucy's fierce love reminded him of Mary's final days, when she'd fought so hard to stay just because leaving would hurt him too much. "Danny," Jack said gently, "what if I told you that I've been thinking about something? What if you and Lucy didn't have to worry about being alone anymore?" Both children looked at him with wide, questioning eyes. "See, I've got this big house outside town, and it's been awful quiet since my wife Mary went to heaven. There's room for a garden and space for kids to run around. And," Jack paused, hardly believing the words coming out of his own mouth, "and there's room for a family if two brave kids wanted to help an old doctor remember how to be happy again." Lucy's grip on Danny's hand tightened. "You mean you'd want us to stay with you? For real?" "More than want," Jack said, surprised by how true the words felt. "I think maybe I need you two just as much as you need me." Danny managed a weak smile. Would you teach me to be a doctor like you?" "I'd be honored to, son." The word son hung in the air like a promise. Outside, lightning split the sky and thunder shook the building. But inside room 7, something magical was happening. 3 broken people were discovering they could fit together to make something whole. Danny's breathing seemed to ease just a little, as if hope itself was working like medicine in his lungs. But Jack knew the real test was still coming, and what happened in the next few hours would determine whether their new family had a future at all. Heavy boots stomped up the wooden stairs like thunder, making the whole boarding house shake. Lucy's eyes went wide with fear as she grabbed Danny's hand. "Hide under the bed," she whispered. But it was too late. The door burst open with a loud bang. Sheriff Clanton filled the doorway, his big belly hanging over his gun belt. Behind him stood a tall, skinny woman wearing a fancy black dress that looked like it cost more money than Lucy had ever seen. Her nose wrinkled up like she smelled something rotten. "There they are," the woman said in a voice sharp as broken glass. "Just like I told you, Sheriff. 2 little street rats pretending to be brother and sister." Jack stood up slowly from beside Danny's bed. His hands were steady, but Lucy could see anger burning in his eyes like hot coals. "What's this about?" "Mrs. Pemberton here. Works for the Territorial Children's Welfare Society," Sheriff Clanton said, picking his teeth with a dirty fingernail. "She's got papers saying these kids need proper homes. The girl goes to Phoenix, the boy to an orphanage in Tucson." "No!" The word exploded out of Lucy before she could stop it. She jumped in front of Danny's bed like a mama bear protecting her cub. "Danny stays with me. We're family." Mrs. Pemberton let out a mean laugh. "Family? Child, you're just a baby yourself. You can't take care of this sick boy. Look at this horrible place. It's disgusting." Jack's jaw got tight, like he was grinding his teeth. "The boy is very sick. Moving him now could kill him. And who are you supposed to be?" Mrs. Pemberton looked Jack up and down like he was dirt on her shoe. "Dr. Morrison," Jack said, and his voice got that important sound it had when he was being serious about medicine. "And I'm telling you that taking these children apart right now would be dangerous." Sheriff Clanton spit tobacco juice on the floor. "You ain't been a real doctor for months, Morrison. Everyone knows you quit after your wife died. Why should anyone listen to you now?" The words hit Jack like a slap across the face. Lucy saw him flinch and her heart hurt for him. But then something amazing happened. Jack stood up straighter and his eyes got fierce. "Because I'm the only person in this room who actually cares if these children live or die," he said. Lucy felt brave all of a sudden. She reached out and took Jack's big warm hand in her small one. "Mr. Morrison's been taking care of Danny for 3 whole days. And Danny's getting better. Aren't you, Danny?" Danny's eyes opened, like Lucy had called his name from far away. They looked clearer than they had in days, not cloudy with fever anymore. "Lucy?" His voice was weak but worried. "What's happening? Who are these people?" Mrs. Pemberton moved toward the bed like a hungry wolf. "Don't worry, child. We're here to take you somewhere safe, where you'll get proper care and good Christian teaching." "No!" Danny's voice was small but full of panic. He reached for Lucy with shaking hands. "Don't let them take me away from Lucy. Please, she's all I got." That's when Jack Morrison did something that surprised everyone in the room, including himself. He stepped forward and put his arms around both children, pulling them close to his chest. "These children aren't going anywhere," he said in a voice quiet as whisper, but strong as iron. "They're staying with me." The room went dead silent, except for the sound of everyone breathing hard. Mrs. Pemberton's mouth fell open like a fish gasping for air. Sheriff Clanton's hand moved toward his gun, then stopped. "What did you just say?" Mrs. Pemberton's voice came out like a screech. Jack didn't let go of Lucy and Danny. Instead, he held them tighter. "I said these children are staying with me. They're my family now." "You can't just decide that." Mrs. Pemberton's face turned red as a tomato. "There are rules, there are papers. You can't just steal children." "I'm not stealing anybody." Jack reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a thick leather folder. Lucy had seen him looking at it sometimes, but he never opened it anymore. "I'm a licensed doctor with a homestead deed and money in the bank. I can provide for these children better than any orphanage." He opened the folder and spread papers across the small table by the window. Even from where she stood, Lucy could see official-looking stamps and fancy writing. "If you want to challenge my right to be their guardian, you can try it in territorial court," Jack continued. "But I guarantee you'll lose." Sheriff Clanton shifted from foot to foot like his boots were too tight. "Now, Morrison, don't make trouble where there don't need to be trouble. The only trouble here is grown folks trying to tear apart a family because it doesn't look like what they think it should look like." Jack's voice got stronger with every word. These children belong together. And they belong with someone who knows what it's like to lose everything and have to start over. Lucy stared up at Jack with her mouth open. Was this really happening? Was he really going to keep them together? Mr. Morrison, she whispered, you don't have to do this for us. Yes, I do. Jack knelt down so he could look both children right in the eyes. His face was serious but kind, like when he was explaining medicine. See, I've been walking around for months thinking I was all alone, thinking I didn't have anything left to live for. But you two taught me something important. Danny pushed himself up on his elbows. He was still weak, but his eyes were bright and listening. Family isn't just about having the same blood, Jack said. It's about choosing to love somebody, even when it's hard. It's about showing up every single day and fighting for each other. And if you'll let me, I want to be part of your family. He looked at Lucy, and she saw tears making tracks down his cheeks. You asked me to help save Danny. But the truth is, you two saved me first. You're mine now. If you want to be. Both of you. Lucy felt like her heart might explode with happiness. She threw her arms around Jack's neck and held on tight. Yes, she said, loud enough for the whole territory to hear. Yes, we want to be yours. Danny smiled for the first time in weeks. Does this mean we get to stay together forever? Forever and always, Jack promised, gathering both children in his arms. Nobody's ever going to split up this family. Not ever. Mrs. Pemberton made angry sputtering noises, but Sheriff Clanton was already backing toward the door. He knew when a fight was over. Outside the window, the Arizona sun was setting, painting the sky gold and orange like a promise. Inside the little room, 3 people who had been lost and alone had found each other at last. Flames danced across the night sky as Jack raced toward the burning schoolhouse, his medical bag bouncing against his hip. 2 weeks had passed since Danny's fever broke, and now the boy ran beside him, his small legs pumping hard to keep up. Lucy had been inside helping the teacher prepare lessons when the fire started. There, Danny pointed through the smoke. I see her. Lucy stood trapped on the second floor, smoke billowing around her as she clutched a stack of children's books to her chest. The wooden stairs had already collapsed, leaving her stranded 20 feet above the crowd that gathered below. Lucy, Jack shouted, drop the books and jump. I'll catch you. The children need these for their lessons, she called back, coughing as smoke filled her lungs. They're the only reading books in the whole territory. Jack's heart hammered against his ribs. This stubborn, brave girl would risk her life for a bunch of books because she knew how much education meant to the other children in town. It was exactly the kind of selfless thinking that had made her save Danny in the first place. Papa Jack, what do we do? Danny's voice cracked with fear. Before Jack could answer, a familiar figure pushed through the crowd. Sheriff Clanton carried a long rope and wore a grim expression that had nothing to do with the fire. Morrison, the sheriff said quietly, we got bigger problems than a burning schoolhouse. Word came in from Phoenix. Mrs. Pemberton's coming back with federal marshals and new papers. Claims you kidnapped those children. The words hit Jack like ice water. Around them, the townspeople worked frantically with bucket chains, but their efforts seemed hopeless against the growing blaze. Above, Lucy's coughing grew worse. When? Jack asked, his mind racing between the immediate danger and this new threat. Tomorrow morning. She's bringing proof that Lucy lied about her last name. Says the girl's actually wanted for theft back in Kansas. Clanton's weathered face looked troubled. Jack, I don't believe it for a second. But if she's got federal backing. A timber crashed inside the building, sending sparks shooting into the desert night. Lucy stumbled backward from the window, disappearing into the smoke. No time for this now, Jack muttered, grabbing the rope from Clanton's hands. Danny, stay with the sheriff. Don't move from this spot. You understand me? But Papa. No arguments. Your sister needs help. Jack tied one end of the rope around his waist and the other to the hitching post outside the general store. The crowd murmured nervously as he tested the knots. Nobody had ever climbed the outside of a burning building in Tombstone before. "Jack, this is crazy," called out Doc Henderson, who'd arrived from the saloon. "The whole structure could collapse." "Then I better hurry." Jack grabbed the rough wooden siding and began pulling himself up, hand over hand. The heat from the flames made his eyes water, but he could hear Lucy's voice above, still trying to save those precious books. Halfway up, a board cracked under his weight. For a terrifying moment he dangled by one hand while the crowd gasped below. Then his boots found purchase on a window ledge, and he continued climbing. "Lucy!" he shouted as he reached the second floor. "Where are you?" "Here." Her voice came from the back room, weak but determined. "I can't find the way out." Jack swung through the smoke-filled window just as another beam crashed down where he'd been hanging. The heat was almost unbearable now, and he could barely see 3 feet in any direction. But when he found Lucy, curled in the corner with tears streaming down her soot-covered face, she was still holding those books like they contained the secrets of the universe. "Time to go, sweetheart," Jack said gently, lifting her into his arms. "The books aren't worth your life. But the children will be just fine learning their letters in the dirt if they have to. What they can't learn without is their teacher's helper." As they prepared for the dangerous climb down, Jack wondered if this would be their last night together as a family. Federal marshals were a different kind of threat than local busybodies, and if Mrs. Pemberton really had proof of wrongdoing, even his medical credentials might not be enough to protect them. But first, they had to survive the next 10 minutes. The rope creaked ominously as Jack began the descent with Lucy clinging to his neck, and below them, Danny watched with eyes full of fear and faith, trusting that his Papa Jack would somehow make everything right. Morning light revealed the charred remains of the schoolhouse, but also something unexpected. The entire town of Tombstone had gathered in Jack's front yard, forming a protective circle around his modest home. Men held rifles, women clutched their children close, and even the saloon girls stood shoulder to shoulder with the church ladies. Danny pressed his face against the window glass, counting the people outside. "Papa Jack, why is everyone here?" "Because sometimes," Jack said quietly, checking his pocket watch, "good folks decide they've had enough of bullies." At exactly 9 o'clock, a cloud of dust appeared on the horizon. 3 black carriages approached, flying federal flags and kicking up enough dirt to announce their importance to anyone within 5 miles. Lucy sat beside Jack on the porch steps, her hair still smelling like smoke from the night before, but her chin raised with quiet defiance. "Remember what we talked about," Jack murmured to both children. "Tell the truth, stay calm, and trust that everything will work out." The carriages stopped just outside the crowd of townspeople. Mrs. Pemberton stepped out first, looking even more sour than before, followed by 2 federal marshals in crisp uniforms. Behind them came a surprise that made Jack's blood run cold. A thin man in expensive clothes who carried himself like someone used to getting his way. "Citizens of Tombstone," the thin man announced in a voice that carried across the desert morning. "I am Federal Judge Harrison Blackwell. We're here on official business regarding the custody of 2 minor children." Mayor Thompson, a barrel-chested man who owned the largest mine in the territory, stepped forward from the crowd. "Your Honor, with all due respect, those children are exactly where they belong." "That," Judge Blackwell replied coldly, "is not for you to decide. Mrs. Pemberton has brought serious allegations against Dr. Morrison, including harboring runaway children and interfering with federal custody orders." Lucy stood up slowly, her small hand finding Jack's. "Your Honor, may I speak?" The judge looked surprised. "Child, this is a legal proceeding, which concerns me and my brother directly." Lucy's voice carried the same quiet strength that had first caught Jack's attention in the saloon. "Seems like we ought to have a say in our own lives." A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. Judge Blackwell studied Lucy with new interest, perhaps recognizing something unexpected in her steady gaze. "Very well. State your name for the record." "Lucy Brennan, Your Honor. Though Mrs. Pemberton there claims that's not my real name." "Indeed. She has evidence that you are actually Lucy Catherine Walsh, wanted for theft in Kansas territory. The judge pulled out a folder thick with papers. She also claims that you and the boy are not actually siblings, and that Dr. Morrison has been harboring you under false pretenses. Jack felt his heart sink. If Lucy really was a wanted fugitive, even the town's support might not be enough to comment. Your Honor, Lucy said clearly, I did steal something in Kansas. I stole bread for Danny when he was starving, and I stole medicine when he was sick. I'd steal the moon itself, if it would keep my family safe. The honesty in her voice silenced even Mrs. Pemberton's protests. But, Lucy continued, I never lied about who I am. I'm Lucy Brennan, because that's the name I chose when I decided to make my own family. And Dr. Morrison didn't harbor us. He saved us. All of us. Danny stepped forward, his voice small but clear. Your Honor, before Papa Jack found us, I was dying. Lucy was trying to take care of me all by herself, and she was just a little girl. Now look at me. He stood straighter, his cheeks pink with health. Papa Jack made us a real family. Judge Blackwell looked from the children to Jack, then to the crowd of townspeople who'd refused to move despite the federal presence. Dr. Morrison, what do you have to say about these allegations? Jack stood up, placing protective hands on both children's shoulders. Your Honor, I've been a doctor for 15 years. I've seen a lot of suffering, a lot of loss, but I've never seen anything more beautiful than watching these two children choose to love each other, choose to fight for each other, choose to build something good out of nothing but hope and determination. He paused, looking down at Lucy and Danny, then back at the judge. They didn't need me to save them. They were already saving each other. I just got lucky enough to be included. The silence stretched like desert wind across the gathered crowd. Then, from somewhere in the back, someone started clapping. Soon the entire assembly was applauding, and even one of the federal marshals was trying to hide a smile. Judge Blackwell raised his hand for quiet. Mrs. Pemberton, your concerns about proper care appear to be unfounded. These children are clearly healthy, happy, and well-educated. He turned to Lucy. Young lady, as for the theft charges given your age at the time and the circumstances, I'm prepared to dismiss them in exchange for community service. Will you accept responsibility for teaching reading to the younger children until a new schoolhouse can be built? Lucy's face lit up like sunrise. Yes, Your Honor. I'd love to. Then, by the authority vested in me by the territory of Arizona, I hereby grant permanent custody of both children to Dr. Jack Morrison, with all the rights and responsibilities of legal guardianship. The judge's stern expression finally cracked into something resembling a smile. Congratulations, Dr. Morrison. You've got yourself a family. The crowd erupted in cheers that could probably be heard in the next county. Danny whooped with joy and threw his arms around Jack's waist, while Lucy tried very hard to maintain her dignified composure and failed completely, bursting into happy tears. As the federal carriages departed and the townspeople began to disperse, Jack realized that Mary's final wish had been fulfilled in the most unexpected way possible. He'd found something worth living for, but more than that, he'd found people worth fighting for, worth growing with, worth building a future alongside. 6 months ago, he'd been a broken man drowning in grief. Now, he was a father, a teacher, a protector, and a healer. Not because of any grand gesture or dramatic moment, but because 2 extraordinary children had seen something in him worth saving. That evening, as they sat on the porch, watching the Arizona sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and promise, Danny asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. Papa Jack, what happens now? Jack smiled, pulling both children close. Now we do what families do, son. We take care of each other, we build something beautiful together, and we make sure that anybody who needs help knows they can find it here. Lucy leaned against his shoulder, finally allowing herself to truly relax for the first time in years. Forever and always? Forever and always, Jack promised. You're mine now, and I'm yours. That's how families work. In the distance, construction had already begun on the new schoolhouse, built with donations from every family in Tombstone. It would be bigger than the old one, with a special room set aside for medical training, because word had spread that Dr. Morrison was planning to teach his son the healing arts. And in the garden behind their house, 3 people who'd been lost and found each other tended the vegetables they'd planted together, secure in the knowledge that some promises, once made with love and determination, could weather any storm the territory might send their way. The Morrison family was home,